Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. All right, g'day everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Voice of Gord podcast. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear is a gentleman I've become acquainted with online, fellow trucker, business owner in trucking and construction down in Texas. And this gentleman is running for Congress, and he's going to try and help us clean up the trucking industry. I'll have links to his website and all of his information in the show notes. And when you look at some of his YouTube videos, it becomes immediately apparent that this guy is on our side and knows exactly what the problems are. And I think we're going to have a really good conversation about his candidacy. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Dwayne Stovall.
How are you, Gord? Good to be here.
I'm good. Oh, yeah, no, it's great. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here in upstate New York and 6 a.m. in Texas. Where are we finding you today, sir?
I am in Austin, Texas, in a hotel room visiting with you. My youngest son is a junior at the University of Texas and has a little ceremony with a group he joined here today, and we're here celebrating with him.
Oh, wow, right on. Oh, good for you. Good for you. Always good to celebrate people's accomplishments. I wish the trucking industry did that more for the people who work within
Yeah, the trucking industry is it's so individual, you know. It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about the trucking industry being so vast and so important and such an integral foundational part of our daily lives that people take it for granted. It's like a bed or a pillow or something like that. And getting truck drivers to put their forces together is very difficult. I mean, you would think that it would be really easy. And sometimes when things are very, very, very tough, when you see things like what happened in Canada and things like that, they do come together and it gets and you see a little shred of that ability that the trucking industry has, but they haven't really utilized it yet. But I'm hopeful that truck drivers will start kind of merging their principles and their drive together and start applying more influence. It's getting better. I'm not gonna lie there, it's getting better, but because of guys like you or Shannon or these guys that are getting involved. But I'm 60 years old. I'm past the heavy trucking end of it. We still run tandems today, but I've watched this all of my adult life, and it got so bad under Biden that I'm impressed that guys like you are coming forward and we're actually putting this out there in the public eye finally.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not 60. I still got a few more miles to catch up with you, sir. But I've been in the trucking industry my whole life. Most of my listeners know my background, and like yourself, I've been seeing the sort of cracks and bumps in the road and the unnecessary potholes, so to speak. And I think it behooves people to point them out so that we can fix them. And hey, what do we know? You also ran you were in trucking, but you also did construction, which I think is interesting and somewhat ironic here, because you're building roads and bridges and whatnot.
Right. And it all ties together. For your listeners, I am 60 years old. I was raised in the oil field. My father, grandfather, it's deeply held in the world, what you call in Texas oil field trash, which is a respectable term down here. It's not something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, in Canada, they call the guys that work in the Alberta oil field rig pegs.
And they love it. And they love it. You know, they earn it. But I was raised in an environment of heavy trucking and welders and pipeliners and oil field work. And matter of fact, I've spent all of my life in Texas except for about 2 years. My father went to Alaska and worked on the Alaskan pipeline, and I was there for a couple of years. But as a kid, but yeah, as I got older, I really never veered away from my raising, and I got into construction. I went to work for Atlantic Richfield at a refinery when I was 22 years old. And while I was there, I started Diamond K Equipment Incorporated, and we dealt in construction equipment and leasing, and got into construction really quick and started building bridges for the highway department in 1998. We formed in 1996, so we've been around a while. Um, I knew from a very early age the issue with non-citizens in the industry, in all of these scopes of industry, general construction, driving, welding, all of it. But what's interesting is that a bunch of your listeners may not recognize this or know it or have been exposed to it. But these issues, if you go back to like 1982, you don't have these issues at all, even though they're here, and people don't realize that you couldn't get a CDL back then, but you could work up until about 1982. And the reason that is because of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court got involved, and a lot of people think that the term, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, the term anchor babies or birthright citizenship or any of that nonsense we talk about today, that never existed until the 80s. So people don't realize that that's a modern situation. The whole idea of crossing the border, having a baby, and having uh, oh, what's it called? Your Social Security card issued to a kid whose parents are from Mexico and can't speak English was never even in the thought process until federal judges got involved in the early 80s. Well, that progressed to what we saw developing in the last 20 years, where you started seeing, or actually a little longer, you started seeing access to CDLs going to drivers that can't speak English. And skipping kind of to the heart of our discussion here today, over the course of the last, I'm going to say 30 years, when we would do projects, if I called a broker out of Houston because I needed tandem dump trucks, say we're going to move 10,000 yards of material and I need 40 trucks on hand. They'll send me 40 trucks, but 30 of them are going to have drivers that don't speak English. And that's been going on for decades, decades. So that's why I'm so appreciative to get a hold of people like you today and get a hold of people like Shannon and these groups of guys who are actually working, physically working and doing the job necessary to get this out front. Because I've watched this for so many years, it got ridiculous, and there was nothing you could do about it. And they're on the road. I don't know how they run their insurance, but I know for a fact they can't be running it like mine because the rate system is so modified by the way these guys enter the marketplace.
Just for everyone's clarification here, I think a lot of people get hung up on the way we discuss this, right? Like, I was talking about this to my wife and my mother-in-law, and they're like, what's the big deal with English? Like, why is everybody so hung up on this? And that's because of the reinforcement that President Trump began earlier this year. But it's not necessarily just the language; it's all the correlated issues that come with the sort of types of people that abuse insourced labor from other countries. So
Right,
not to say that everybody who does not speak English operates in this way, but like there's a correlation with working for much less money, which means less money spent on repair, less money spent on insurance, less money spent on their overall operations, and a lot lower quality and a lot less attention to safety, right? We have
sure,
a something I like to tell people is that, for as much as North American driving culture and North American trucking operational culture is not perfect, it's still really good and it still gets the job done, right? And
yes,
that culture, okay, is here. And you have to learn it by being here and you sort of pick it up via osmosis, right? So I try and explain to people like you are learning about driving culture here when you're a kid and you're riding around in the car with your folks. And
right,
then maybe you go to maybe you take a driving course when you're in high school, and then you get your license when you're 16 or 17, and then you grow up around it, and you're sort of imbibing it just by being here. You cannot, and then if you get into trucking and you do it correctly, like I grew up in a trucking family, I was taught by my dad and my uncles. I was working for a trucking company at night after high school. I've been in the business my whole life. I have that culture built inside me.
That
And
life experience.
yeah, a
Yeah.
whole life experience. I've never been involved in a collision. I've never hurt anybody. I've been very successful in that way. You cannot take someone who just showed up here from Guatemala or India or Somalia or wherever, uh, and just expect them to understand that culture and to operate in the ways that we do. Now, it can be taught, it can be done over time. They can pick it up. All humans, like most humans, I think, are capable of learning this stuff. But the reason why these guys are being brought here is not to teach them in that way and have them assimilate into our driving and operational
Oh,
culture,
absolutely not.
because
Yeah.
if they learn about it, they might ask for more money. They
Yeah.
might, and
Yeah.
the whole point of this is to undercut us.
Yes, absolutely. It's strictly a cost and motivator. That's they are the bigger players in this who are utilizing illegal drivers and benefiting from that. That it's as if they've never even taken into the scenario, the scope of the safety aspect of it. You know, the USA is an interesting bird anyway because there's no other country in the world that behaves like this. None of them. Um, got a friend of mine who was shipped off to Amsterdam to work for Shell, and he took his family, was going to be utilized there like 3 or 4 years, and when he showed up, he took his 5-year-old to school and marched his little daughter into school, signed her up, and they left. And within 30 minutes, they were called and said, "You need to come back and get your daughter." And he said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "Well, she doesn't communicate in Dutch." And he said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, here's a list of tutors who will teach her Dutch, but bring her back when she can communicate." So they took her home. And it took about 2 or 3 months for this kid to get to where she could interact. And once she could interact, even on a basic level, she was inundated in the school and saturated it. Now she speaks 2 languages. But the fact is, that's the way it should be done in your homeland. These guys driving around who can't read or sign, that I don't even understand how that even happens. And I've never understood that. But I find it I'm trying not to get cynical about the fact that, like in Texas, we're making a big deal out of Texas working with ICE right now to do these setups on the highway, these screening processes. Because I want to say I'm very grateful that they're doing that, but I also want to say why it take you so long to get to this point. It's highly irritating.
Yeah,
But
well, it's human nature, right? People don't adapt or change or fix things until it's no longer possible, right? Like if you've got like a leaky pipe in your wall and it's just a little drip, drip, drip behind the drywall, it's not rotting. You sort of know it's there, but it's not a priority yet
you'll get to it.
until the whole seal is gone and your like floor is flooded. Oh shoot, I better fix this now, right? That's
Yeah.
human nature, and that applies to these complex systems. So I want you to, we're just starting off. Tell us about your candidacy. So you are running to be a member of Congress.
Yes, I am. Now I have interesting to me life experience. We're talking about you and I talking about your different life experiences. I've been in construction and trucking in the oil field for all of my life, and about I don't know, it's been 20 years ago or so. I was at the state house in Texas paying attention to the legislature. And you do that when you're in construction in Texas. If you do highway work, they have what's called a bid letting. And every month, that's when they open all the bids to the current bid letting for that month. And a lot of contractors take the time to go to Austin and hang out and be there physically for the bid letting. And if you're curious, like I am, of course, in Texas, our legislature is only in session every 2 years. So Some of us think that's great because they can only for 5 months every 2 years is when they can mess with you, and then after that they got to go home. But if you're curious like I am and you want to know how they fund everything, you go spend a little time at the legislature, and you're right here at the Capitol. So I started doing that actually in 1999. So it's been a very long time ago. I got active in it probably 20 plus years ago and started speaking in front of committees and addressing the legislature where I had an opportunity to, and trying to apply some influence. There's a lot of your drivers out there who are going to share this exact same quality. I got into the historical aspect. I guarantee you have some drivers out there running down the highway who are historians and they read a lot. So they'll get exactly what I'm talking about. I got into the origins of who we are and what the Constitution is supposed to protect and how it's supposed to operate many years ago. And it was kind of the same pathway. I'm in construction. I've got these employees. I'm studying all this originalist language. I'm studying the Texas state constitution, and I'm kind of utilizing that as I'm speaking with these different legislators. Well, all at once, back in 20, I want to say it's 2010, my own state representative got up in the House and made this big, impassioned speech about why they needed to pass this law that would criminalize smoking in private restaurants. And I'm not a libertarian or I'm basically an independent, but the Republican Party is aligned more with me than any other. And I went livid when he said we need to put smoking so bad. Well, yeah, smoking is bad. My father smoked like a chain smoker, and I never smoked. But I thought to myself, no, I can't do that. So I talked it over with my wife and said, I'm either going to stop voting or I'm going to run against this guy. So I ran against him uh, as a layman with no political deep experience in the party here. And over the course of 12 weeks, by the way, anybody out there thinking they want to run for a state office, 12 weeks is not a good target. You really want to start earlier than that. But I ran for 12 weeks. I made him spend about $360,000 he had no intentions of spending, and I pulled about 45% of one of the counties in our district and 43 in another county. And the one he and I both live in, I didn't even campaign there, and it was like 35% or something. But I made him spend a lot of money. Thankfully, at that time, our sitting governor vetoed that bill because it actually passed. So the idea that an individual who owned a restaurant who might smoke themselves had patrons who also smoked, and it would criminalize that behavior, set me off over the edge. Well, from that point forward, I was heavily active in the Republican Party here in Texas. So as a business owner, the Republican Party has been closer to the ideals of free markets and less government involvement, intrusion, and all that. And they talk a good game a lot of times and don't really fulfill it. But that's the reason guys like me try to get involved and apply pressure to it. Now I've run twice in the state of Texas for U.S. Senate against a guy named John Cornyn, which many of you probably already know. On 100 grand in 2020, I pulled about 12.5% of the primary, and he spent $18 million in that cycle. And it's just a different ball game. Now this one, I walked away from the 2020 primary and was just wore out. Politics is gruesome, and it's tough. It's really, really hard. It's controlled by so many moneyed interests. I'm not saying anything your listeners don't already know. They know it's the powerball of cabals of moneyed interest. Whoever can pay the money can get it done. That's the reason we have these driver issues anyway, because if there was no money involved in it, they wouldn't be here. But I walked away thinking I wasn't going to participate anymore because I just wore out. And I had just a personal note. I had about 2.5 years that were pretty rough. I've had both hips replaced, and I had a bout of throat cancer. And but it's weird. I'm 60, and I'm in better shape now than I've probably been since I got married. I've been married for 34 years to a young lady I met in high school. That we've been together all our lives, basically. And we have 3 kids, and I've got 4 grandkids. And it's funny. I say this about my kids. and you need them. I'm not gonna knock the profession, but I've griped about two professions all of my adult life, and that's lawyers and bankers. And truck drivers kind of get that too, you know, because you're always having to deal with a banker, and good Lord, if you got to deal with attorneys or bond companies or insurance or whatever. But wouldn't you know, my oldest is my daughter. She's 32 and she's an attorney, and my oldest son is a banker, and I think my he's a finance guy, and my youngest son, I think he's going to be in finance too. So it's just, you know, we're just going to stick the knife in and twist it,
That's
Dad.
awesome. So
Yeah.
I'll share a little anecdote with you, sir. So I've just completed writing a book about the fate of the North American truck driver. It's called End of the Road. It's coming out in March. Pre-sales open on Monday.
Oh wow.
And one of the chapters of my book is called Necessary Parasites. And it is unlike any of the other chapters in the book. Every chapter in my book, I open it with like a anecdote from my own career or my dad's or something like this, and then I use that as a springboard to talk about an issue in trucking. And there are many of them.
Right.
And but the Necessary Parasites chapter is about the relationships and influence of the service providers we have to deal with to operate as a business, right? So one section of that chapter is about lawyers. One section of that chapter is about truck financing.
Right.
So
Sure.
I think if your kids read the book, they'll be like, "Oh, hey." Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had two attorneys on my program. I've had an insurance guy, also a Texan, on my podcast a couple of years ago. Um, Only podcast I've had to remove. I talked to this gentleman, and he mentioned in passing the name of an insurer, not like a retail insurer, but one of the people behind it all.
Right.
And he didn't say anything bad about them. He just sort of mentioned them in passing, and they threatened him and said, "Hey, we don't want to be, we don't,
Included.
yeah,
Yeah.
and tell your boy to take that podcast down." And so I did. I've still got the file and everything, and I referenced it. I've took other parts of that interview and put it in the book because this guy is a real pro and really understands the insurance industry. But yeah, some of those folks don't like to talk. And in doing my research for the book, I wanted to talk to as many people on that side of the equation to get more context. Pardon me, I've got a really bad cough. And to get more context, and a lot of them didn't want to speak. Hey, I had a great difficulty getting certain attorneys and certain insurance people to agree to be interviewed for the book or come on my podcast to talk about like what's going on in the background here, like
I bet that was
why,
difficult.
yeah, why are these guys that just showed up here yesterday with dodgy CDLs being insured? How is this possible? Who is giving them money for trucks? Like, um, one of my an associate I used to work for back home in Canada, and someone my dad grew up with, and my dad also worked for this guy. He's very pro free market, and he was very happy with the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 and the opening up of the market. And he said this was necessary, but he said the industry was regulated in other ways, right? If you did not have the competence or wherewithal, the operational fortitude, and the skill to run a trucking company, no finance company would lend you money for a truck. No bank would give you credit for you to operate. Nobody would insure you. And that's all gone now, right? So, like, the internal financial and industry regulation is gonzo because, like, it's either greed or incompetence or corruption where these service providers are just not doing any due diligence and not providing any barrier to entry. They'll just give money to anybody to operate, which is bonkers.
Oh yeah. 25 years ago, there was a certain amount of self-regulation that we could run into as a business owner, as in, and this is something that, and I'm sure you agree with this. I'm confused by it because 25 years ago, if I would have hired a driver, give him a road test, done the due diligence, put him in the seat of a truck, if there was a flag on his history, within 24 hours, I would have gotten a phone call from my insurance agent and said, "Hey, that guy gets out of a truck. You can't use him." I don't know how that doesn't apply. I don't know where the screening process broke down. I don't know how. I don't know if it's unlawful. I don't know if there's a bunch of illegal activity going on, but I know that there's no way that I could have ever put a non-English speaking non-citizen on staff. There was no way that was going to happen. Today, it's so prevalent, and there's so many independent operators. How do you possibly figure out how do they get insurance if it's so difficult for a native domestic operator to go through the process to even get financing and get insurance? How is it even possible that these guys can get on the road and get insurance? It's like I'm assuming we got a lot of false insurance stuff going on out there. That's the only thing I can assume. If they're following the same litmus test I am, they're not on the road. So I've never understood that.
Right. So when let's say you get elected, right? So you're running for Congress, and this is for next year's midterms in
This is for
2026.
March
Yeah.
primary here in Texas.
Right. Okay. And then the general election will be next November.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we're a year out.
Right.
Let's assume, let's be optimistic that you are successful, and Dwayne Stovall goes to Congress, and you'll be one of only. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if my listeners know of somebody else and I'm missing this out on this, please email me and let me know. But as far as I know, the only Congress critter in the trucking industry is Mike Collins out of Georgia. Or do you know of anybody else?
I don't. I know there are a handful of, I'm going to call them friendlies so far. I'm going to call them just a handful, like 5 or 6 or so, but I've never heard anybody with any real life experience. The one you're speaking of, where's he at? Georgia?
Yeah, Mike Collins. He's a Georgia
Yeah.
Republican. Yeah.
Yes, that's a rarity indeed. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I've
Um,
invited Mr. Collins, the representative, to come on my show. His media guy only ever answered one email, but we'll see. Maybe that'll change when my book comes out. But
Oh, I think you'll probably end up getting him just because of the cultural shift going on right now. The influence and the drive and the information is being put out there so heavily, and now Sean Duffy's getting so much press. It's becoming in vogue to be on the side of the trucker now, which I'm perfectly good with that.
yeah,
Let's
me too.
let's go
So
that direction.
yeah, so in that direction, let's say Dwayne Stovall is successful. He's in DC. Now he's working with guys like Collins. We've still got Sean Duffy at USDOT. What are you going to tell these guys specifically about trucking? What are you going to do to try and further shake things up? Because we got the English language thing, we got the ICE thing. ICE is now cooperating with states like Oklahoma and Indiana and trying to clean things up. That's great. But the problem is this, and a lot of my friends in the sort of trucking advocacy world in the media sphere are trying to tell Duffy and guys like Collins and everybody else, it's not just the drivers. How are they getting insurance? How are they getting money? How are they getting their CDLs? Who's hiring them? Why are we not going after the companies, these small companies that are
That's the
all
biggest issue.
often also owned by all these various migrant groups? Like, where are all of these other steps, guys? Like, when are we going to clean this up? Tell me
They
your
are
tell me your plan.
to me they are on the of the edges of the iceberg. I think that you're kind of hitting on a bunch of stuff right there, which is absolutely necessary. I think the idea is you have to follow the incentivized part of it. Who's incentivized to use these guys? Which is going to be the owners and the companies that are hiring them and utilizing them and incorporating for them a loan, making them individual liabilities so that they can just wipe them off when they go get an accident or get in trouble or whatever. Um, those things are going to have to be weeded out. I'm also a much larger scope guy. I think on a federal level, they need to go completely after a moratorium on immigration and visas of all kinds. It's like this fake driver shortage thing they've been talking about most of my adult life. That's nonsense. So that drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. And I've had about a belly full of this whole idea that they're doing jobs that we won't do. That's nonsense too. So my idea is to not only try to figure out how we're going to make it a problem for employers, to participate and how to set the bar so that it's an equal playing field for insurance access for drivers, because it's not. And if you can address those, but at the same time, we've got to figure out what to do with this immigration issue we have. In Texas, it's vicious. I mean, it is vicious. Yeah, is it down because Trump's in office? Sure, it is. It absolutely is. But it's not going away. And we've already got millions and millions and millions of illegals here. And then it dominoes into every other aspect of your life. We got truck drivers running on the road trying to figure out how they're going to compete with people who are dropping their rates because their drivers aren't from here and live in a clan somewhere trying to hide from the law. But at the same time, those drivers' kids are going to school and they're being reduced to having to deal with schools that don't have budgets because they got illegals that are covering up their schools. I live 12 miles from a development here called Colony Ridge. And Colony Ridge is a development so large that it could double the population of the county I live in. And it advertises in Mexico. And they bring illegals here like you would not believe. And some of the areas of this subdivision look like a third world country. But it all dominoes over to the fact that, and I think if anybody's ever seen the video that I put out, it's home to a lot of the drivers we have to deal with every day. But that type of magnet for illegal aliens and drug cartel members and such like that, we've got to figure out a way to stop all of that as well. So I'm heavy on the idea of having a moratorium on all immigration. Uh, if you're non-English speaking, the concept of you coming here, being able to drive a vehicle and get on the road is ridiculous. I don't even understand how anybody with any logic or common sense in government anywhere came up with the concept that that would be okay. And now here we are, years and years and years into it, and they're acting like, oh, well, maybe we'll look at it now. Well, like I said before, I'm thankful that we're actually addressing some of these things, but we're not moving fast enough, and we're a day late. I'll take what they'll give, but that's not enough. We've got to address a lot of these larger issues. And it is a domino effect. That's because trucking is so integrated into so much of our lives, and it touches all of us. It touches the rates of everything that you do. Everything you see, touch, smell, sit on is affected by, cost wise, is affected by trucking. And it's very hard to get people to understand that. It'd be like the people who think that we need to get rid of oil and get away from petroleum products. Getting out of trucking is the same nonsense as getting out of oil and gas. It's like your life depends on these items. And if you think you're going to toy with those, you're really wrecking the whole process. So trucking is such an integral part of our lives. And I'm that's the one thing I'm most positive about it. I think that people are really beginning to understand that in a way that they've never really had it influence them. Truckers can laugh at this. My thought is trucking is like air. You breathe it every day. You don't even think about whether you've got air or not every day. You just live with it. So it's so common to you, and we take such advantage of it that we don't think twice about it. But if you took it away, it'd be like taking air away from the economy.
Oh yeah, no, I
Yeah,
mean, there's been graphs about this for years, right? The whole it used to be a bumper sticker. If you got it, a truck brought it. Um,
for
I,
sure.
I think they said if all trucks in America stopped within 3 days, your grocery stores are basically empty. Uh, Probably your gas stations are empty about the same time, 48 to 72 hours. Some of the bigger gas stations would be empty within hours. I mean, you live in Texas, which is, I believe, the home of the really interesting gas station chain Bucky's, right?
Oh yeah.
They got a fleet of their own tankers, and some of the Bucky's gas stations, like they've got six trucks servicing them all day long, like
Yep.
six trucks bringing in three loads a day. Like,
Yep.
truck stops, that gas station's hooped within hours,
Texas
not
is
even.
interesting because we get to experience what happens without trucking about every few years. We have a hurricane come through. When the hurricanes come through, the trucking comes to a screeching halt. And exactly what you're saying takes place in everybody's lives. and everybody is touched by it in a negative way, and it brings it home. The stores empty out, the supply chain ends, there's no availability, fuel disappears. It becomes very, very serious, very fast, very fast. Within just a few days, things are turned upside down, and then everything gets back to normal, and everybody remembers that or forgets that this is how important it is. Next thing you know, truck drivers are out there getting yelled at again because they're on the road and somebody's in a hurry. But that's the nature of humans, But I think we're in a crossroads right now, or actually a peak where we can take advantage of this in a way that's very positive for the economy, very positive for the traveling public, and remarket the reality of what trucking is to the economy. And I think we're right there on the precipice of being able to do that. Um, I hope so. You got to understand also, you talking about my race. Where I am at in Texas is the southeast Gulf Coast. If you went to Houston, anybody in trucking who's been to Houston and been up and down the energy corridor understands I-10, or the beast we call it, going from Houston towards Florida. My congressional district takes up that entire energy corridor. Liberty County is northeast of Houston, but it takes in kind of pie shape that goes down to the loop in Houston. It takes in I-10, all of the Houston Ship Channel, Highway 90, which is a huge trucking draw in Houston. We probably have more trucking outfits in this congressional district 9 than all the other districts put together. It's massive. You can imagine we've got all the refineries, we got all these manufacturing plants, most of the big distributors in trucking, the big players, manufacturers are based in this district or on our side of the Houston. It's a huge, huge market. So I'm really spending a lot of time reaching out to the different fleet owners and fleet corporate and independents, because we got a boatload of them. Where I'm at, it's logging and heavy equipment. When you leave us and go southwest into Houston, going down the energy corridor, you get into all kinds of transport from hazmat to flatbed. So it's just a huge family. But we're kind of back to the original discussion I was talking about. Finding a way to align everybody to pool their resources. Um, when you're running a campaign, it's so money oriented, and it's hard to get truckers to get involved. They support it, but it's hard to get them to trust putting their money where their mouth is.
On that question, so you just mentioned where the district you're in, adjacent to Houston. It's around all this stuff. Um, I keep coming back to Houston, right? So I've been doing my podcast now for a couple of years, and another question coming out of Houston is autonomous trucks because they're being tested between Houston and Dallas
Oh
Fort
yeah,
Worth on 45. And I had the Greater Houston Trucking Association reached out to me and a colleague of mine to inform their members about what's going on with these autonomous trucks, because I've worked with a few other guys in the industry that are paying attention to this. Now, I didn't even know there was such a thing as the Greater Houston Trucking Association,
right.
but I'm assuming maybe you're working with them or you know of them.
I know of them. I know of them.
I would think they would be on your side with some of this stuff.
I'm sure. I'm actually, they're on my list to contact because they're Houston focused. Um, which doesn't matter to me. I've talked to the guys at Texas Trucking all the time. So it's what you're getting into is an interesting subject matter. It's funny that you're bringing that up because my wife and I took an autonomous vehicle last night by accident. It wasn't by accident. We caught a ride, a Uber, and they sent us an autonomous vehicle. I've never seen one till last night.
Oh wow, how's that?
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. And my wife and I were just looking at each other going, this is too strange. Like when we were kids, you'd watch a TV show with some sci-fi talking about this stuff, and here it is. I'm not, you know, call it my age, call it what you want. I'm not sold on that by any stretch. And I do like the fact that all of the EV restrictions and movement out of the federal level is being restricted a lot. A lot of that's being peeled back, thank goodness.
I don't know if it's
Uh,
being peeled back so much as I think what the Trump administration is doing is a lot of these guys depend on taxpayer money. And I'm sure, as a Republican and somebody who's leans towards the free market, um, I don't think it's the taxpayer's responsibility to shovel money at electric vehicle companies or
no, it's
autonomous
not.
vehicle
No,
companies.
it's not.
So like, I mean, go ahead. I mean, you want to develop a product, you want to sell it to the public, by all means, but don't come looking to me to finance it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the whole subsidy aspect of it, which is where they're actually getting it. The when I say they're rolling back this stuff, it's a lot of the funding aspect of EV stuff that the federal government has been involved in. They're peeling back, and I'm glad to see that. I'm very much with you on that. That the idea is if you want to do it, knock yourself out. But the whole point of benefiting from entrepreneurial investment is that you're the one putting the risk up. So I don't want to be part of your business model. And it's not even that. Taxpayers are unwilling participants in these business models. And so we've got all these different green programs that have failed over the years to billions and billions of dollars, and we're on the hook for all of that. And it just continues daily. And administrations mean something when you get to that point. And depending on who's in leadership and the people that want to abuse the purse, we're just kind of at their whim. And that's a huge, huge thing. But that autonomous truck thing, man, that's so much of that is so highly questionable. It's like the involvement of AI in trucking and the development of AI in our lives and where it's taking everybody and how fast it'll take everybody and what we're going to do with replacements and how it's going to impact the economy and how we work. Is there a point in time where you want to restrict non-human guidance and some of this stuff? I think it's a possibility we're going to have to start having that discussion because I'm not necessarily fond of unmanned anything. I'm just that way. I don't think it's helpful to have unmanned, non-human producing portions of our economy that are as big as we're talking about. I don't see the benefit to it. And now, if I were a global player, yeah, I could see the benefit to it, you know. But I think at some point you have to look at this from a more literal standpoint of how it affects the daily lives of the citizens of the USA.
Right, and this ties into the previous issue that we're discussing, which is all of the migration, and you've got this development that's advertising in Mexico, and we have all this in-source labor coming in. So as you mentioned, you mentioned yourself that you want to look at like a bigger picture view of this, and my bigger picture question, and other people are asking this, it's just maybe it's not getting the press that it should. This particular question, if we are facing a future and we're at it now, it's already happening. It's not the future, it's happening where artificial intelligence and these technologies are already starting to replace a lot of white collar workers. Um, if we are displacing people from jobs, and guys like Elon Musk are tweeting about this constantly, he's like, you guys have to get ready for a future where a lot of people aren't working and
He
just be
is,
happy
yes.
with it. I disagree with this for many other reasons, but if we take what these guys are saying as a given, okay,
Right.
if this is true, if all of this stuff is going to happen, okay, why are we still insourcing so many millions of people from around the world to come here and work now if all they are going to do is end up getting unemployed and take a rapidly deteriorating employment situation and pour gasoline all over it and just set the whole thing on fire?
That's right.
We are going to be facing, they're telling us directly, mass unemployment. Why are we moving half of, pardon my language here, effing India and Mexico and Central America and East Africa? And this is, I don't have any animus towards any of these people. They're just people, right? But like, why are they all coming here to work if the powers that be are telling us that we're all going to be unemployed? None of this makes any sense. Why are you doing that? Why are you like taking money out of my pocket to subsidize the rest of the world as you are also trying to render me unemployed with robots. Make it
But
make sense.
well, you'd have to look at it from a globalist perspective. And if you buy into the concept of a global citizen and the idea that we're going to have a centralized monetary dollar that's going to be globally acceptable, and we're going to have global concerns or governmental processes, then it makes perfect sense. But if you believe in sovereignty and you believe in the countries being independent nations, and you believe in protecting the individual's uh, right to exist, then yeah, you're totally opposed to it. But from a global perspective, the idea is to get. Gord, that we've had a public education system that teaches us from the time we're born not to think critically or to weigh things out and have a logical end. They've raised us for many generations now to be very docile, manageable masses, and so we're worker bees, and we're all in the system together. It's who controls the system. So I don't want to get off in a bunch of wild goose chases here, but I'm going to tell you that I've traded construction equipment for about since the '90s internationally. I'm not a big player, but I've done it, and I've traded between Germany and Japan and Canada and Australia, and I've got friends in the industry all over the world. And my exposure in my early 30s to some of the globalist ideas that are circulating out there, um, I was kind of shocked by it, and the whole conspiracy theorists out there who are all being proved right now is kind of funny to me. But yeah, I think we're we're looking at this trucking industry and the way it's affected by immigration. But what people need to understand is, especially if you're younger, for 25 or 30 years now, this government, Republican and Democrat, by the way, has used our money to pay the transportation costs of basically men, generally, from foreign countries and implanted them in areas in different states against the will of the citizens of those states without their permission. And that's been going on for the whole idea of taxpayers funding the movement of refugees is ridiculous. They don't have the authority to do that. They just do that. And you tie that all in with the fact that we're going to bring refugees here, and at the same time, we're going to get them CDLs and put them on the highway. It's all tied together. So you've got to take this from a viewpoint of what we want to do is stop centralizing authority on a global scale. And we want the United States to start dispersing all of that involvement in these international arrangements and stop spending our money in foreign countries and stop doing some of those things are like huge 30,000 feet viewpoints, but they still trickle down to even our individual issues here in trucking. So there's such big failings and issues that need to be dealt with that actually affect us. It's a pretty broad target. There's a lot of things you can chase down. We can get macro or micro about this whole discussion anytime you want to. The idea of immigration, that's the reason I think there's a lot of this that could be dealt with if you put a moratorium on immigration of all kind and all visas. I'm also not opposed to revoking existing visas and deportation. And if you've extended your visa, uh, or let's say you've outstayed your visa, that's an easy list. I don't know why these people aren't being deported in a nanosecond. So some of this, by sheer legal steps, could be accommodated and corrected pretty quickly if we dealt with immigration as a whole, and then made the government have to come to the table on how we're going to do this in the future. I think immigration is maybe I'm by myself, but I think the whole idea of the melting pot has been the cultural multicultural blending is a disaster. I think it's been a disaster. It's proven a disaster. I don't think it's healthy. I think it hurts cultures more than it helps. And that what has happened over the course of 230 some odd year, 40 years in the USA has culminated into a situation where we're so factioned off and tribal that there's really no agreement across the board on much of anything. And so much of that is driven by allowing cultural differences that don't assimilate to come here.
JD Vance, the vice president, had a really great tweet about this yesterday.
Yeah,
Um, he was talking about our neighbors up North Canada, where I'm from originally, and I just want to read this because he's echoing something you said, and it's a great tweet. And then he followed it up with another one that was also awesome. And he says here, while I'm sure the causes are complicated, no nation has leaned more into diversity as our strength. We don't need a melting pot. We have a salad bowl immigration insanity than Canada. It has the highest foreign born share of the population in the entire G7, and its living standards have stagnated. Right. So, this,
true.
yeah, the melting pot thing or assimilation, some people think that's bad because Western civilization is bad and people should be able to retain their culture when they go live places. Okay, what about the places they go live retaining their culture as well? Right.
Right.
And then we started off the show talking about trucking culture, safety culture, driving
Yep.
culture. All of this stuff is related.
It all
We
bleeds
like,
over together.
right.
Yeah.
If you can go on YouTube and see videos of highways and cities in India and other places in South America or Thailand or wherever, and you just look at the traffic and you're like, holy crap, how is, and then you look at the crash statistics, and like India's got some of the highest in the world,
Oh yeah.
and you cannot, like, the salad bowl thing, as Vice President Vance put it, that doesn't work because
Uh-uh.
the you've got conflicting vegetables whose taste profile don't go together, and then the salad tastes like shit and nobody wants to eat it.
At some point, you have to believe that someone set out to destroy Western civilization like the USA, because that's all it does. It's very destructive. It's not positive. It's the concept of, oh, what's the argument put forward by people who are pushing H-1B1 visas that we're going to bring the brightest and smartest over here? Well, I think the statistics don't prove that because 70% of the visas that are issued come out of India. And I think 85% of those are for manual labor or for entry level positions. So you can't make that argument. What we're doing is we're just displacing American workers. And and you would agree with this, I think, that 15 years ago, if you said they're just displacing American workers, they looked at you like you were crazy. But I think now it's being proven out that's exactly what they're doing. They're changing the market to suit them based on getting a lower cost employee with a lower overhead and bringing them here, or going outside the country for it in general, just making your phone call go to somebody you can't understand. So it's and all of this overlaps into the trucking industry, except that the trucking industry is it when it affects the trucking industry, it's so direct and it's so public and it's so negative, and it affects all the drivers who don't even have to contend with it are contending with it and they don't even know it, and they don't understand why their insurance rates are going up 25%, or they don't understand why things are getting so out of whack on cost, or why they're losing work at a particular contract, and it affects all of us. That's why I'm so adamant about getting truck drivers to realize how strong they actually are. If they actually pooled their resources, they could do serious, serious things in a positive way for them and their families and for the USA as a whole. And I think maybe we're at a moment where they're going to recognize that. I hope they do.
Yeah, I think we're at a tipping point with some of this stuff right now, and I'm really glad you're running, sir. Um, but trucking, as important as it is, isn't a sort of like be all end all. I'm curious to know, in your campaign for to become a congressman, what are some other issues animating your campaign and that you're people in your county and your district are talking about over and above the migration and the bad trucking stuff?
Well, it's funny because some of the bigger issues actually kind of revolve around all the same things. It's like I'm one of the things I want to put forward is an amendment to the Constitution, which we haven't amended in many, many years, and it's very, very difficult to amend. But I want to amend the Constitution to change the language that requires members of the legislature to just have 7 years citizens of the USA. I want to make all positions the same as the president's position. I want them all to be naturally born with single loyalties. They need to be single citizens of only one country, this country. They need to be born here. And I want to clarify some of that language so that we can get away from this whole argument of what natural born citizen is. Because the reality is, natural born citizen is someone who was born here to Americans' parents. That's where people get lost. In the 14th Amendment, it says, and the jurisdiction thereof. The jurisdiction is that of your parents. So if that's the reason it gets so ridiculous when they say, well, a family from Mexico crossed the border at El Paso, went to the emergency room and had a baby, and that baby got a Social Security card and is now a U.S. citizen. That's not how it reads. Under the jurisdiction thereof, and let's take Mexico out of the picture. If you're a if you're a couple late in a pregnancy and you're traveling from Italy and you're visiting family in New York, and there's an incident or if something happens and the woman gives birth to the baby, that baby's still an Italian. Its parents, its jurisdiction is that of its parents, and they take that baby and they go home. It's not an American citizen simply because they had a baby. They go home to Italy, it's still an Italian citizen. Well, this whole screwed up, completely mistaken way of, or wrong-headed way of looking at this has got us to the situation where we are now. So we have full-blown loyalties to Somalia in Congress. We've got full-blown loyalties. You don't want anyone sharing loyalties with another group of people in the world other than us. None. So my concept kind of starts and stops with you got to clean up where the loyalties lie, and I want to put forward an amendment to change the Constitution to clarify that so that you must be a natural born citizen. And I think people moving here would even agree with that. I don't think it's smart to have people in enclaves in Michigan that are by and large transplants of foreign nations who don't ascribe to our way of life or the United States and have some kind of animus towards us anyway, and having them elected to offices where they're going to influence policy, which is all kind of comes back around to trucking. We have people involved in this who are trying to help their own countrymen, their own yeomen, so to speak, get over here and be successful without playing by our rules. And so much of this surrounds having the wrong people participating in our economy and in our culture. Visitors, great. Come here and visit, do whatever you want to do. But the idea that we're going to modify every aspect of our lives to suit every culture that wants to cry about we need to be more inclusive of their culture. No, we don't. There's no, like we said earlier, there's no other country in the world that behaves the way we do.
Right. And well, and all the traffic is always in one direction, right? Like I've said this a few times now in some of my writings, and it's, I say it in my book, like find me a guy who looks like me with a plaid shirt from Canada or Texas that's driving a truck in the Punjab, drinking a Tim Hortons coffee, crashing trucks while taking a job from a guy from the Punjab who also
Right.
did not learn Punjabi. It's
Right.
zero. It's zero. There are no American truck drivers working in Somalia taking money from the Somalian government, okay, and then
Yeah.
sending it back to the United States to give to the CIA to undermine, like, because like look at this thing that just got revealed this week, right? That the Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, has been revealed to be engaging in all kinds of Medicare and Medicaid scams
Oh,
with
yeah. Somalia
Somali
based.
citizens. Yeah. And
Yes.
then and now the money is going to Al Shabaab, a known terrorist network.
Sure.
Like, what are
Sure.
we doing here?
This is insanity on steroids. But back to what I said earlier, if you pay attention to this long enough, you have to come to the conclusion that someone does it on purpose. Because nobody, this is self-inflicted suicide, both personally and economically. This is the pathway to destruction. And it's going to take very meaningful, structural, physical changes to the way we do business. This is not going to be a, people will say, well, it took us 100 years to get here. It'll take 100 years to fix it. No, we can't do that. It's going to take structural changes in the immediate. And deportations are just the beginning of it. And it's cleaning up the roles of who's here. You can't have bad actors everywhere in the economy and then subsidize them while you're doing it and then tell everybody else around them, well, you just got to live with it. No, we got to figure out these bad actors, be it illegal aliens, transplants, extended visa stays, a moratorium on immigration and deportations increasing would be great. And I do enjoy the work that's being put in right now with all the screening stations that are being put in. I don't know if you saw that here a few weeks ago, but we had a screening station with Oklahoma coming across 40 out of the panhandle into the quiet part of Oklahoma. I think in one day, in one screening session, they hit 120 plus drivers. That was a one session out there with these guys screening these drivers. That's amazing. To me, I say run it every day. Run it every day, everywhere. I don't care. Screen them, filter them, get them on a plane, get them out of here.
So in Texas, you're in Texas.
Oh yeah,
There's been some there's so since a lot of these very horrific collisions have entered the media zeitgeist, many of the political sort of
pressure.
media atmosphere is looking at them and they're assigning a lot of blame to Gavin Newsom in California and policies in California, and that's all true. But like Texas is doing this as well. Texas has got its own problem with
Oh,
uh
issuing licenses.
yeah, and I'm just curious to know like what are you hearing or seeing anything in Texas in moving towards what they're doing in Oklahoma or Indiana to help clean this up? Like is Abbott or people in Texas like, hey, we got to clean up our own mess here in
Finally,
Texas.
finally. And I think it all initiate just from the optics of it. I think when Transportation Secretary Duffy came out and isolated, called them by name, the states that were issuing licenses to non-domiciled or illegal aliens, and Texas was in it, that changed everything for me. I think that changed the optics, it changed the scope, and it changed the pressure. And when the pressure changed, all of a sudden, Texas is going to review and stop the issuance of these licenses. Well, great, but how many years have we been doing that? But right now, we've got DPS working with ICE on screening stations right now, which are I'm all about that. But like we talked about earlier, it's you've got to maintain a certain amount of hopefulness and be glad that they're doing it, even though you and I and people like us know that they should have been doing it 20 years ago.
Right. I got
Yeah,
another question for you. Let's say you do make it to Congress. Now you're at the federal level, right? So ICE, Border Patrol, all these agencies also have to interact with the neighbors, right? You guys are in Texas, you're on the border with Mexico. I'm from
right.
Canada, I live in New York. There's a whole lot of truck traffic that comes out of Ontario going back and forth to the Midwest and the East Coast. That's sort of where I got my start in trucking, was hauling steel from Canada down in here into the US. Uh, these problems are not only in the United States, right? Shannon forwards me these documents. Is it the Texas Department of Safety or
Yeah.
Texas Traffic? The main guy from that who had written a letter to the FMCSA last year, saying, "Look, man, like I have evidence that the Mexican version of their DOT and their DMVs are also corrupt, also issuing Mexican truck driver licenses to guys from all over Central and South America. No vetting, no training. It's corrupt. The cartels are in there to make sure that their cartel driven trucking companies are coming into America because an awful lot of freight comes back and forth along the southern border. And then we have the issue of cabotage, where Mexican carriers or American-based carriers employing Mexican drivers are moving loads around within the United States, which is illegal.
Right?
And then in Canada, we have had a problem with the increase in issue of what they call temporary foreign workers and then the international mobility program. There's all these different scammy programs in Canada that the Canadian trucking industry has just been utterly parasitized. Like the Indians are claiming that there was a guy who an Indian migrant from the Punjab who was interviewed by a Indian Canadian newspaper a few years ago, and he bragged about this. He says, "We Punjabis have taken over 60% of the Canadian trucking industry." Like,
Yep.
imagine the balls to say that, number one. And then number two, those guys are all coming to the US. A lot of them don't speak English, right? So a recommendation I've made is like over and above ICE and like trying to deal with, the CDLs and whatnot is why are we not having Texas DOT sitting at every single one of the border crossings, New York State DOT, Washington State DOT, Idaho, all the main routes coming down from Canada, and just pulling every single one of these mother truckers over and saying, hey, are you here legally? Do you speak English? Is your CDL legitimate? Are you safe? Like, because the problem is not just in the United States.
Oh, for sure. And let me say this. I think we've got 26, I want to say 26 or 27 points of access and egress in Texas on the border. So we're talking about over 1,000 miles with about 20, 25, 26 points. Yeah, those should be screening stations full time. I'm also of the belief that if you don't qualify under the statutes that we have for commercial driver requirements in the USA, that when you hit the border, you should be out of the truck. And I don't care how operators do it. I don't care if they want to put another tractor under a load that passes a CDL walkthrough at the border. I don't care if they want to swap drivers. I don't, as long as they put a certifiable U.S. approved, Texas state approved, or U.S. state approved CDL English speaking driver in there, who's a
Competent, skilled, safe.
yes, yeah, legal citizen for that matter. So you can work out all by the way, this is nothing new. If we hauled, I ran interstate, excuse me, interstate. If we needed to move a crane from Texas into Louisiana, we bought and paid for and did the inspections to get a day rate, a day pass or whatever to get into Louisiana. And I live here, and we're English speaking drivers and owners. I never understood why it's such a big deal for operator or the transport companies. Why couldn't they? Why couldn't they work out a transportation system in which the load is coming from Mexico City or whatever? It hits the border. You got a transition of drivers. You got a transition of a tractor. I don't care. Do whatever you need to do to make it meet the requirements that are here in the States. Make the transition, get the write off from the screening at the border, and then come on in. I don't understand why that's so difficult. The idea, but I don't know if you remember or not, Ross Perot running for president back when they did the NAFTA. And
The
he said,
sucking sound, the
that
giant
sucking
sucking
sound,
sound.
yeah, coming from the south of the border, right? Well, this is all part of that. That is we're dealing with the culmination of all of the lack of requirements on so many of the Mexican drivers originally. Now it's if we got drivers from everywhere in the world, but um, the trucks didn't meet standard here, and they were allowed to come here. So we had all kinds of stuff on the road that shouldn't have been on the road. I think that we need to go ahead and suspend all this at the border and make it meet the criteria that you and I would have to meet here in the States. And that cleans up a lot of that issue. But yeah, I don't see why we can't have screening process at the border all the time. I know that they have some type of screening going on at Laredo, which is one of the biggest international ports, inland ports in the world. Um, I don't know if they've ever focused on what you and I are talking about and what other drivers are concerned about, because I know too many non-English speaking drivers who've come through Laredo.
It's not just the English, it's the training. And something I mentioned in my book and I've been banging on about for years is like, never mind the guys coming from overseas. I think the standards, the training standards, the amount of time required to spend behind the wheel, the competency that you must display to get a license, I believe that they are too low to begin with. Right.
I think it starts and stops with, have you been through our process? I don't really care what country you came from and you drove in. I don't care if you got 40 years experience driving somewhere in another country. If you haven't been through the process here, been certified here, have a license here, and meet all of our requirements, I don't care what your license says from somewhere else. And that may be a little harsh, but I think that's you have to hold that standard at the border of the USA, or you're going to let everything go to pieces. We're going to end up back where we were today.
No, I agree with that. And I'll share an anecdote. Some of my listeners have heard this story already. But so I went trucking in Australia. I got brought down there on a 4-year business sponsorship visa. And I had been trying to go to Australia for many years. I've sort of been obsessed with the place since I was a little kid. And I went, I was working in New Zealand, and then I go to Australia in 2004, and I try and do everything right. I go to an Australian technical college. I take another course to upgrade my license to do, road trains. They have like a whole graduated licensing system there, which I think we
Right.
should take some suggestions from because that helps train people better. So I do that out of my own pocket. I spend thousands of dollars. I get all their tickets, hazmats, forklift. I do everything to the Australian rules. Okay. I'm also from a country that speaks English. I already know the language. Culture is the same. Yes, they're driving on the other side of the road, but I'd already went and done that in New Zealand. So I'm trying to do everything to the letter of the law as best as I can. And I still had a hard time getting a job there. And so fast forward a few years, I go back to Australia 10 years later in 2014. And I've got this visa and I'm going to work for a company in a different state. So I had got my license in South Australia, and then I get a job at a company in Western Australia, with a company in Perth. The Western Australia state government told me that my road train license from South Australia, their neighbor that has the same standards and we speak the same language in the same country, not
Right.
good enough. You have
Really?
to go and resit your test. So I had to spend another $800 to go to a truck driving school approved by the Western Australia state government to show them that I could pull a set of 2 trailers around the city of Perth, back them up, take them apart, know all their various different little slight differences and rules, and do all of that all over again to get a Western Australia state road train license, even though I'd already did all the training on everything in the next state over in the same country, same language. I'm like, Australia's got a lot of problems with it, kind of like Canada and how their government operates. I have plenty of criticisms of the place,
Sure.
but they're they have very strict rules about who can get licensing. And I'm like, why can't we do that here?
That's amazing. That's amazing. I don't know why we can't do that here. Well, I'm going to say we can do that here. That's part of the reason why I'm running. You can do that here. So you get enough, like yourself and Shannon and these people who are highly involved now. The influence is changing. The pressure is changing. I think that the outcome could be good that way. I think there's a lot of different moving parts, but I'm a firm believer you get a handle on immigration first, and then you start backing into the screening process. I don't necessarily think our CDL processes in the States is bad. I think if you left it to citizens, you'd be in a much better condition already. I think they would clean up a lot. I, I, I don't
Yeah, well,
know.
because we grow up here, we have our culture by osmosis, and most
Correct.
people want to get along. Most people want to comply. I'm not saying like everybody's like, oh, we're all slaves to the government or something, but
Right.
we understand that by having minimum standards of operation, minimum standards of cooperation, that this is how everything works. And we get that. And we are happy to go and do the training and do things right. We are
Gotcha.
not just simply showing up to become remittance donkeys to send money overseas who don't care about those standards.
Very true. Except that I'll argue the fact that we are slaves. And I don't do slavery well, so Gord, there you take that how you want.
fair,
I'm
fair
not a
enough,
fan of
sir.
government.
No, not me neither. But like, so there's this concept called anarcho tyranny, where the government won't protect you or won't enforce things, but then if you try and do it yourself, they'll come after you, right?
Sure.
And yeah, we might not be big fans of government, but they do have certain roles to play. And for, better or for worse, they're in charge of the roads. They maintain them. They're supposed to look after everybody's safety and make sure that the system works. That's their role. And if they're going to do it, they should be doing it correctly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are aspects that are helpful. I think I could see the states having a 50-man committee that get together and align each one of the states' guidelines. And you wouldn't even necessarily need a federal if the states were all on the same board, on the same page. Um, but at this point in time, if the federal government would take the lead on it, that'd be very helpful. No doubt about it.
Right, sir. Well, I hope that I want to wish you the best of luck in your run for Congress because it sounds like you're on team fix trucking and increase, make things better for the people that actually live here and your constituents, rather than servicing the needs of globalism and international capital and all that fun
Absolutely.
stuff. It's hilarious how much we sound like 1990s leftists sometimes.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but where can people find you? Where can people, if you send this podcast to folks down in your congressional district, how do they find you? How do they get involved?
They can go to the website at DwayneStovall.com. That's DwayneStovall.com. Texans for Stovall on Facebook, Texans for Stovall on, I think, Instagram or YouTube's Dwayne Stovall for CD9. X is at Dwayne Stovall. I'm pretty easy to come by. I think we've got 23,000 followers on our political page. Um, it's it's an interesting time in our history. I think I think if the trucking family, and I always refer to it that way, and I have people laugh at me like that, but no, you don't understand. If you've been around truckers very long at all, you realize that you can beat each other's heads in, but at the end of the day, you're the only one that gets to beat each other's heads in. If somebody else comes around, it's kind of like that brother or sister or whatever, you can talk about them, but you need to be quiet about them when somebody else is there. So I'm hoping we can generate enough influence among truck drivers to kind of stick together and exert the influence that we can because they're so powerful. And it's hard to get. You get to driving down the road and you're by yourself, and you kind of get lost in the idea that you're by yourself. And what they need to recognize is just a small engagement by each one builds such a large coalition of so much influence. If anybody was interested in getting involved in this, if I had a fraction of the trucking family get involved and drop $10 into a campaign, the other candidates in this would get blown away. It's just we're so forceful that way. It's just hard to get everybody to understand we do have that ability. But yeah, they can find me pretty easily, and emails go directly to me. We've got a good campaign staff, running against a couple of attorneys who are well funded, who fight with the same money at organizations and the same legal cabal, and they're not in our district. One of them doesn't even live in our district, so it's an interesting combination, but it's a marketing situation, and I need funding for that. So most of my issue is going to be fundraising over the next 12 weeks or so. But other than that, man, I appreciate what you're doing, Gord. You and guys like Shannon, I always point to you guys that you're kind of on the forefront trying to keep the information out there and keeping it alive. And I think the movement shows we're having success, and I feel it. I don't know about you, but I feel like we're moving in the right
Yeah,
direction.
no, it's yeah, there's definite vibes going on in the zeitgeist. I'm going to once I release this, I'm also going to send you along to some colleagues of mine down in Texas. There's a podcast called the Logistics Lounge, I believe those guys are in Houston. And then there's another fella up near Austin, like right by where you're at now, named Mike Lombard, Lombard Trucking Podcast, and he's been involved with some Texas Trucking Association stuff. He probably knows many of the same people you do. Great guy, super high energy. He runs Ironmans. He's a maniac.
Oh
I
yeah.
think I think you'll really enjoy talking to him. Oh yeah, he's something else. So well, thank you very much, Mr. Stovall. I really appreciate your time. Good luck with your campaign,
Well,
and
thank you, Gord.
enjoy your time with family up there in Austin, and have yourself a happy Thanksgiving.
I will. You do the same, and I do appreciate it a lot. You keep after it, and you're doing good work.
Thank you, sir. Way of the road.